right. Welcome, everyone, to the Foundry this morning. We're so glad that you're here with us. If you're joining us online, we're glad that you're joining us virtually. We are going to start our service this morning by singing some worship songs, and we invite you, if you'd like, to stand and join us in song.
Creation sings your praises, so will I.
the stars were made to worship, so will I. If the mountains bow in reverence, so will I. If the oceans roar your greatness, so will I. For if everything exists to lift you high, so will I. If the wind goes where you send it, so will I. If the rocks cry out in silence, so will I. If the sum of all our praises still fall short, then we'll sing again 100 billion times. God of salvation, you chase down my heart through all of my failure and pride. On a hill you created, light of the world, abandoned in darkness to die. And as you speak, 100 billion failures disappear. Where you lost your life so I could find it here. If you left the grave behind you, so will I. I can see your heart in everything you've done. Every part designed in a work of art called love. If you gladly chose surrender, so will I. I can see your heart a billion different ways. Every precious one, a child you died to save. If you gave your life to love them, so will I. Like you would again 100 billion times. But what measure could amount to your desire? You're the one who never leaves the one behind. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for not leaving us behind. You guys can have a seat. Welcome again. We're so glad you're here. If we haven't met before, my name's Liza, and this morning I want to direct your attention to the QR code in front of you, or baltimore.com/connect. It's going to be where you can find out what's going on, and if you've been hearing over the last couple weeks that we are not going to be here next Sunday, that is the place where you will get all the details of what's going on next week. So you'll get some information. If this is your first time here, or you've been here for a while but you've never checked it out, I encourage you to check it out. And also send us some of your contact information so that we can connect. We won't spam you, I promise. Lindsay sends out an email once a week of like, hey, just so you know, this is what's happening. So I encourage you to go there, and you can also fill in a prayer request if you have one, because we know there's a lot going on in your lives, and the staff prays for those throughout the week. Another thing that we do here at the Foundry is that we are a generous community, and we're generous in lots of different ways, with our time, with our talents, with our finances as well. And I just wanted to share a little bit about one of those pieces that happens because of your generosity, but that piece is something that's very close to my heart. And that is the trauma healing workshop that we have in the winter. So we had it this past February, we had it the one before that, and then a couple versions of that prior on Zoom. And the trauma healing workshop is something that it only takes place because we are able to fund it in a very logistical sense, but it is time where we come together and we sort of dig into what do we do when we're dealing with faith and trauma together. Some of you have been around and have heard parts of my story before. And one of the parts of my story is that I have done a lot of counseling. I have needed to do that. God has graciously given me those opportunities to work through some of those pieces and figure out how to wrestle with, all right, God, what happened? And you really were there the whole time? You really do love me. So I love being on the team that helps do this trauma healing workshop. And what we are doing in that is partnering in the work that God's doing already. He's working in our lives. He's here in this community, not because of us, but he's already doing a thing, and then we get to partner with him through these different opportunities that are happening here at the Foundry. And because of your generosity, those kinds of things happen. So that's something that's very near and dear to me, even though it happened a few months ago. But because we have those opportunities to be generous, we can have that happen. If you want to give, you can do it in the boxes in the back of the room. You can also give online, and you can send it in the mail. So those are available to you. We're going to continue our service this morning by doing the last sermon in the Attention series, so I'd like to invite Josh up for that.
Thanks, Lisa. How's everybody doing this morning? Not gonna lie, sometimes I make transitions awkward. I should have gotten up a lot sooner, and I did not, and so I apologize for that. We are gonna wrap up our series today talking about attention. So in week 1, 3 weeks ago, we started out by talking about how our attention is incredibly, incredibly valuable. And so even to the point where our attention is monetarily valued at $815 a day, that is being spent actively on capturing and holding your attention. And so advertisers, marketers are spending that amount of money every single day to capture your attention. Why? Because your attention is incredibly valuable, and they know that if they can get a hold of your attention, they're going to get your money, right? That's like a thing that is just true. And because our attention is so valuable to marketers, we talked about the fact that if our job as followers of Jesus is to be bringing heaven to earth, that perhaps God would say, hey, you think of this as like $815 worth of a day worth of value, but the reality is it's actually far more valuable than that. If our job is actually to be bringing heaven to earth, then how much more important is our attention? How much more valuable is our attention? So week 1, we said, inattention to our attention will lead to distraction from the life that we were created and designed for. Another way to say that would be, if you don't manage your attention, somebody else will, and bad news, somebody else already is. Lots of people are trying to manage and manipulate your attention. Last week, we talked about how worry is something that co-opts our attention and keeps our attention focused on things that maybe we wouldn't actually want to be focused on in light of what it is that we want our lives to become. And so we talked about the fact that, man, when we get really keyed in on worry, it kind of comes back to 2 primary things, right? The first being, will I have enough? And the second being, am I enough? And those 2 worries, if we allow them to, will pervade in our lives, and rather than actually living the life that we would like to live, the life that we are designed to live, we will actually end up living a life that we don't want. And so this week, we're going to jump in and we're going to talk about everyone's favorite subject in church, money, right? So we've locked the doors. You can't get out. You're going to have to stick around whether you want to or not. I'm just kidding. If you're here for the first time, or you're not a follower of Jesus, or you're trying to figure out what it is that you believe about Jesus, about the church, and you're really trying to feel out, like, hey, is the Foundry a church for me? Like, hopefully today is not going to freak you out at all. We're going to talk about money from a very different perspective than maybe you've experienced money talked about in church before. And so hopefully at the end, you won't be heading for the door because of how we've talked about money. But we're going to jump in and talk about money because the truth is money actually dictates what we think about quite a lot. Can we turn me down just a little bit? I'm getting like a crazy amount of reverb up here. Sorry. All right, so there was a study that was done recently that showed that the average American spends about 1.9 hours a day worrying about money. So just shy of 14 hours a week we spend worrying about money. And, I don't know about you, but money can easily co-opt my attention. It's a thing that, we are constantly thinking about because it's how we survive. It's how we live. It's how we do the things we want to do in life. In 2010, a guy named Kevin Kelly published an article on the MIT Technology Review that was titled this: Money Follows Attention Eventually. Money follows attention eventually. And in it, he detailed the different ways that advertisers have attempted to and have successfully captured our attention, because if they can do so, then they can separate us from our money, right? That's the whole idea behind that, is that they're going to make money off of getting a hold of our attention. Now, this is in 2010. So social media is still relatively new at this point. It's really kind of just getting started. Facebook and Twitter at that point have only been around for a few years. Instagram was started in 2010. Google's been around for a little while, since 1998, but they really only got traction a few years before 2010. And so search has been seen to be a really awesome new kind of place where people can start to capture attention from people who are jumping on the internet and everything. And Kelly's whole point in this article that he published was the opportunity, or the potential opportunity, that he saw for advertisers to capture far, far more attention through social media. And this is in 2010. And now we know the effects of that are radical, that the attention market has become an incredibly, incredibly sought-after thing. And, we know $815 a day is being spent on capturing and holding our attention. And the reality is, with all of that money being spent on it, with all of the focus on capturing attention, money actually is something that still seems to be on our minds quite a lot, and it has the ability to kind of derail us from the life that God created and designed us to live if we don't think about it correctly. Jesus talks about money a lot. In fact, it's one of the subjects he spent the most time talking about. And today we're going to look at a passage where he is addressing money, and he's telling us how to think about it and why it's so important that we actually think about the way we think about money. And so we're going to jump into Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 21. This passage comes directly before the passage that we looked at last week. So this is inside of what's called the Sermon on the Mount, which is a collection of teachings of Jesus from Matthew chapter 5 through Matthew chapter 7. And in this, Jesus is teaching people what it means to follow him, what it means to be human, and how to love God and live, really. And so Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 20, Jesus is going to talk about money, and then our passage from last week about worry comes right after that. So, in Jesus' teaching, we're doing it backwards a little bit, but Jesus is kind of like, hey, more money, more problems. It's kind of like, the flow of his message. We're gonna land on money instead of starting there, but it's definitely a thing that he recognized was on our hearts and on our minds as humans. So Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 21, it says this. Jesus says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy, where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So, what's Jesus saying here? Verses 19 and 20, he starts out by saying, hey, don't bank on stuff, right? Don't lean your life against stuff. And the question we have to ask is, what does he actually mean by that? What does he mean by don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth? Is he like, hey, you just shouldn't have anything. You should never have anything. You should just constantly be thinking about like the future of heaven, this ethereal thing that's going to come one day. Don't spend any time or attention on what's going on today. Just focus on the future. Or is he saying more than that? And I don't know about you, but if you've done any time in church, I've heard that. Like that we're supposed to like just be thinking about heaven one day, someday. But if that's true, it's kind of contradictory to the way Jesus actually lived, right? Like Jesus spent a lot of his time with people. He spent a lot of his time taking care of people's physical needs, healing people, providing food for them, just hanging out with them and being in relationship with them. And so is it possible that Jesus is actually saying something more here? That he's saying, hey, it's not a bad thing to be invested in the physical, in the presence, in what we see around us presently. We just need to make sure that the ways in which we're doing that are the right ways. He's not saying don't think about this life, only think about the one to come. He's saying invest in things that matter. Invest in things that last throughout all eternity. He's saying invest in things that bring heaven to earth now. Invest in things. Give your attention to things that bring heaven to earth. So, how do we do that? How do we do that? How do we invest in things that actually bring heaven to earth? How do we store up treasures in heaven now? And the reality is, what Jesus is talking about is investing in people. He's talking about investing in things that are going to last, the relationships that are going to last. And then Jesus goes on and he says this thing that is misinterpreted in the church so often. He says this thing about money, and it's easy to think that he's saying the opposite of what he's actually saying. He says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Now, I don't know about you, but if I just listened to that verse, and for a long time, when I heard that verse or read that verse, I always just thought it meant that, like, hey, what you care about, that's what you're going to put your money toward. But that's not what Jesus is saying here, is it? Jesus is saying, where your treasure is, that's where your heart is going to be. What's your heart? Your heart is what you care about, what you spend your time and attention and effort and energy on. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be also. Now, this may sound like an incredibly simplistic look at this verse, but the reality of it is, like, it's true. Like, I've experienced this in my life, that where I invest my dollars, my heart goes in that direction. My heart just naturally kind of goes in that direction. I'll give you what's going to seem like maybe a little bit of a cheesy example. But for a long time, television was like a thing that happened, for a period of time, once a week, every other, or every day, that kind of thing. Like, if you were into like Seinfeld, Friends, that sitcoms, that type of thing, you have like every day from 5:30 to 6, we're going to watch, whatever. I think Friends was later than that. But anybody have like a recollection of that? My kids have no clue what I'm talking about. They're like, no, TV is a thing that you go to and you turn on, and like, or you go on your phone and you just watch whatever you want, and you can watch as much of it as you want. Like, it's just there. I'm like, no, that's not how it used to be. It used to be that if you missed it, and you could like wait to buy the VHS version of it when it came out, or the, binge it on DVD later on, or whatever, go to Blockbuster and rent it, whatever. But like, if you missed it, it was just gone. And I remember in college, I was really into this show called Lost. Anybody watch Lost? Yeah, right? So I was really into Lost. And I had friends that were really into Lost. And so we would have Lost parties every Wednesday night. We would watch Lost together. And then the next day, we would like discuss like what it was that was like, what is the monster? Is it like real? Are they dead? Are they alive? What's going on? And so we were constantly debating this or whatever. But the reality is, I would spend like, maybe an hour, however long that show was, right? You'd take an hour, watch the show, and then like the next day we'd talk about this at lunch for like an hour, and then it would be done, and I would be like, okay, and now we move on, right? And what's weird is with streaming, it has changed the way I interact with human beings in a way that is truly actually astounding to me when I stop and think about it, because I've found that like it's really easy to relate to people based on like what shows we watch, right? Like, do you do this? I don't know. If I'll meet somebody new and I'll be like, oh, like, back in my mind, I'm like freaking out. Like, what do I talk about with this person? Like, oh, have you seen this show? And they're like, oh, yeah, I like that show. And then we can talk about the show or whatever. But the reality is it's like radically changed the way I interact with human beings. Whereas before I would like talk about like, hey, like, who are your friends and who are your family and that type of thing, because I didn't know a world where we could infinitely talk about television for forever. And so now it's like, well, I could just make friends based on the shows that we watch. And the reality is it's really, really easy when you're doing something like that to never actually go deeper than the surface level and actually get to know a person, right? Because you can talk about Ted Lasso for a really long time. I have every sermon that I've preached for the last 3 weeks, right? Like the amount of time I've given to Ted from this stage is Scott's probably going to hit me when he gets back or something. He would never hit me. He'll just tell me I need to do better. No, he would never do that. I'm just kidding. He's probably watching right now. It's really, 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 it's really easy for us to think that a tiny little bit of money doesn't really affect the outcome of our lives anyway. But my Netflix subscription or my Apple subscription or my, there's like a bajillion of these now, right? Have actually dramatically impacted my life. They've impacted the way I interact with and relate to people in dramatic ways. A tiny little bit of money has changed the way I interact with and relate to people. And if that can be true on like a tiny little like $15 a month subscription level, imagine what the aggregate of how we spend our money actually does, actually affects us. I mean, it can affect where you live. It can affect the people that you engage with and relate to and interact with. It can affect how you think about people. Just simply by a small little amount of money, our lives can radically change. And so what Jesus is saying here is really, really important, that where our treasure is, that's where our hearts are going to go. Where we invest our finances, that's going to change who we are in ways that we maybe wouldn't even recognize while it's happening, because it happens in little tiny bits and pieces, but it changes us. And if we're talking about how there's an enormous amount of money being spent on guiding your attention, and eventually your money is going to track where your attention goes, then it's incredibly important that we pay attention to what we are paying attention to, and incredibly important that we pay attention to where our finances are going. And I'm not talking about giving to the church here. I'm just talking about consciously understanding how the money that we make and have and spend is impacting our lives. And is it leading us to a place where we actually want to go? Is it making us and shaping us into the people that we were created and designed to be and desire to be in our hearts? There's a guy, an author that I really like. His name is Bob Goff, and I don't know if you've ever read any of his books, but they're excellent, and I would highly recommend them. One of the books that he wrote, the first one that really kind of caught fire, was called Love Does, and it's just a collection of stories from his life of loving people and like being with people. And one of the things that I admire the most about Bob Goff is that he does not watch television. He literally talks about in Love Does that the last time he watched a movie was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which is hilarious to me. Like, you should watch something else so you don't have to tell that story. But at any rate, like, That's the last time he ever watched a movie or TV of any kind. Doesn't have a TV in his home, doesn't watch it. Why? Because it's a distraction from living the life that he wants to live. And this dude lives a crazy, crazy life. And I'll spare you all of the stories that, I'd just be regurgitating that he tells. And you should read the books. They're awesome. He lives an incredibly crazy life. And part of that is because he has said, I'm going to focus my time, effort, and attention and money on living a life that I one day will stand before God and be super, super, super proud of. And that's what Jesus is getting at in this passage. He's saying where your treasure is, that's where your heart's going to go. It's going to go there, and whether you recognize it or not in the moment, it's going to lead you to a life. And is it the life that you want and desire? This past week, my parents celebrated 43 years of being married. And so we did a vow renewal ceremony for them. And so they were married in St. Anne's Church in Annapolis, so the church on Church Circle, if you've ever been to Annapolis, 43 years ago. And so we did this vow renewal at basically the exact time they were married 43 years before. And so it was this incredibly, incredibly beautiful thing. And the reason you might be wondering, why 43 years? That's, I don't know I don't know any of the anniversary things or whatever, the gold, the silver, the diamond, platinum, grass, whatever it is. I don't know, green, yellow, red, whatever it is. I don't know any of them, but I know that 43 probably isn't one of them, right? It's not one of the ones that you're hey, that one, this is really, really important, 43. It's not nothing. I'm not saying that. It's just, it's not 45, certainly not 50. But the reason that we did this vow renewal is because my dad planned it as a surprise for my mom. And the reason that he planned it as a surprise for my mom is because in March he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is incurable blood cancer. And so he wanted to do a renewal of their vows because, the future is uncertain. And so he called his best man and her maid of honor and had them there and brought in our family and my mom had no idea that this was happening, or at least she says she had no idea. I don't know the truth yet, but I don't think she had an idea. So brings in all these people, plans this whole thing. They go to breakfast in Annapolis, and they're hanging out, driving around, and then they pull into the church, and we're all inside the church, waiting for them to come in. And we did. So we did the renewal, and my dad had a custom ring designed for my mom that she didn't know was coming, and it was beautiful, right? But it was awesome. And in the middle of the ceremony, I just kind of opened up the floor for people to share about how my parents' marriage had impacted their life. And so, there's probably 20, 25 people there just all gathered around, and people just started sharing memories and moments and things that they had seen in my parents' marriage and in them as individuals that had really made an impact on their life. And it was this beautiful, beautiful moment of stopping and reflecting on what really matters. And getting to hear how my parents, who are incredible people, have invested in people, in relationships, have loved them well, and what an incredible impact that made on how heaven had come to earth because of the way that they had lived in relationship with people and loved people well. And as we were going through that ceremony, I was thinking about this morning, and I was thinking about the way in which honestly, I was just thinking about when I stand before Jesus one day, I don't want to tell him about Ted Lasso. He already knows. He's watched it. He knew before it came out. But when I stand before Jesus one day, I hope that what he tells me about is not Ted, but the relationships that I've invested in, the people that I've loved well, and that he tells me that he's proud of me for the way that I've done that. And it was like a really incredible and beautiful moment for our family. And it was kind of a wake-up call to me of like, man, like, it is so important how we live. It is so important. And if our money is going to dictate the outcome of our lives in ways that is beyond what we probably would fathom, how important is it that we actually stop and go, hey, where's this going? Like, how is it flowing through me and into things that bring eternity here, now, that bring heaven to earth here and now? And so as we wrap up this morning, I want to read to you the words of a song by a guy named Andy Grammer. I would highly recommend you. This is actually kind of like a spoken word piece that he just released a few weeks ago. And I've been listening to it almost daily because it's such a good reminder. It's called "I Need a New Money," and it's, yeah, I'll just read it to you. It's a really cool way to kind of stop and think. It says, I'm not merely an epic, okay, I'm sorry, start over. Here we go. I'm not merely an economic unit, I'm human. How far off are we that can sound confusing? I want to strive for more, but oftentimes I don't know how to. I need a new money that measures my inherent value. What's your salary? What's your rate? What's your hourly wage? What's your position, your commission? How much are you for the day? When we meet somebody new, what's the first thing that we say? What do you do? AKA, how much money do you make? And then we take that information and we sort it in our brains, assess the value, calculate where to put them on the page. The hierarchy of importance, I mean, this is just insane. You're telling me that we've agreed to tie self-worth to what we're paid? You're telling me that we've agreed to tie self-worth to what we're paid? Well, what a grave mistake to make. What terrible advice to take. If the scoreboard counts in dollars, what kind of game do you think we'll play? And then he goes on, he says, I need a new money that measures my inherent value. What if the scoreboard tallied love? What if the stock market valued love? What if your 401k was judged by how much you lifted others up? What if the best we could get was love? What if we were impressed with love? What if the status in class was love? What if it mattered how much you loved? What if money was not enough? What if we worked 9 to 5 for love? What if the point of this life was love? What if the point of this life was love? So as we head into a time of communion this morning, I just want to ask you to just stop and reflect. Reflect on the things that you're giving your time and attention to. Evaluate, maybe this week. Am I spending my money in ways that are sending my heart to a place that I actually want to follow it? And maybe a next step for that is to say, hey, I'm going to take some time and show up next week and come to Serve Sunday or come to serve on Saturday with 10, 12 sports. Maybe it's to be generous, to take a subscription, cancel it, and take that amount of money and point it in a generous way that's going to lead you to a life that you were created and designed for. Just to spend some time reflecting. It is so easy for us to be distracted. Our attention is being sought after. We're being manipulated. And so we've got to pay attention to what we think about, to how we spend our money, so that we live the life that God designed us for, a life of love that was demonstrated by his son for us. Not only in his sacrifice, but also in the way that he actually lived, in the way that he invested in people and in relationships. To the extent that 2,000 years ago today, we are still celebrating and recognizing his impact on humanity. So now we're going to receive communion. And that is a celebration of Jesus' love for us as demonstrated by his sacrifice, that he laid down his life and allowed his body to be broken. That's why we eat the little piece of cracker. And his blood to be poured out to pay the price for our brokenness so that we could be reunited with God, so that we would know how loved we are, and so that God's love, not just for us, would live in us, but his love for every single human being on this planet would live in us, and heaven would come to earth because of that. I'm going to pray for us, and whenever you're ready, you can come and receive communion. Let's pray. God, we are so grateful for Jesus. We're so grateful for the way that you have demonstrated your love for us. We're grateful for these symbols that we'll hold in our hands, that we'll partake in to remind us of your love. God, may your love dwell in us. May we know that our value comes not because of what we get paid or who pays attention to us, but because you're attentive to everything about us in ways that we can't even fathom. You love us more than we could ever fathom. God, I pray that we would receive that love and that it would flow out of our lives and into every life that we encounter, every person that we encounter. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. You can receive communion whenever you're ready.
This time we're going to continue worshiping in song. We invite you to take as long as you need. Just sit, whatever God's talking to you about, however you're connecting with him through this communion. Take that time. When you're ready, we invite you to stand and sing with us.
I'm caught up in these holy
sorry when I've just gone through the motions. I'm sorry when I just sang another song. Take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you. And I'm sorry when I've come with my agenda. I'm sorry when I forgot that you're enough. Take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you. I'm caught up in your presence. I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never wanna leave. Oh, I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything that you can do. I just want you. And nothing else, nothing else, nothing else will do. I just want you, and nothing else, nothing else, nothing else will do. I just want you, and nothing else, nothing else, nothing else will do. this last verse really loud with us. High King of heaven, my victory won. May I reach heaven's joys, oh bright heaven's sun. Heart of my own heart, whatever befall, still be my vision, O ruler of all. Amen. You can have a seat. So the last thing that we have for you this morning is a reminder of what's coming this Sunday. This next week, Saturday and Sunday, we have a chance to serve, and it's a chance to see where God is stirring in your heart, in being your vision, in what Josh was talking about. So we have a bunch of opportunities to serve next week listed on our website at foundrybaltimore.com/connect. If you come here, no one's going to be here. The doors won't be open. The lights won't be on. And we're doing this to have an opportunity to be in our community and serving. So there are a ton of things listed on the website, but I want to point out two in particular that need some more volunteers. One of them is on Saturday. We're going to be serving with 1012 Sports. So if you're able to sign up and work with them, then on Sunday you get to sleep in. And another one is that we are putting together a painting crew to go to Francis Scott Key School, one of the local schools that we support, and do a painting project there. And we definitely need some more bodies to help out with those two projects. If you, like me, are not going to be in town next week, that's okay. You can still participate. There are a bunch of opportunities that are listed on the site, on our website, for things that you can do in other places. So Foundry at large, as a community, we're going to be working wherever we are to serve the people around us, to love the people around us, and to continue to partner in the work that God's doing. So go check those out, sign up for some of those opportunities for next weekend, and figure out, how could I do that if I'm not going to be around? So thank you so much. We will see you in 2 weeks. Have a great day, everyone.